Hello and welcome to another episode of Real PR. Today with me, Lauren. I'm really excited to talk to today's guest. We're going to get some really good information about storytelling and the importance of it as a business owner. So I'm going to let G introduce himself. Over to you, G.
Okay, hi, I'm G, Gamal Turawa. Um, who am I? I think I'm just a person on a journey. That's how I see myself, and been blessed with a story that resonates with people. I was a former cop. I've been a former magician. I've got loads of background in loads of different stuff. But I think mainly I'm a storyteller.
And tell me what you're doing nowadays. So the things that you're doing to help tell your story.
I run workshops, I do keynote presentations, and I use my story to help people to unlock their own stories. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something
Mm,
that I think we talk about as PR specialists. We tell people
mm,
the importance of telling your story and being authentic and giving something
mm.
that people can relate to. So, without me going into it too much, and I'll let you tell your story, Jay, can you just tell us who you are and how you've come to do what you're doing now?
Okay. How long have you got?
We've got half an hour.
Yeah, I've got a summer squeeze it all down. Right. The summary is I was born in the early 60s. I was fostered for the first 8 years of my life. I was then kidnapped from my foster parents and taken to my natural parents for the next 8 years of my life, which created a lot of internal dynamics around identity and self-worth, etc. And then was sent to Nigeria, where I lived for another 8 years, came back from Nigeria, um, and joined the police. And while I was in the police, I became the first openly gay black police officer, which was like not my intention, but it happened. When I was coming up to the end of my career, somebody came and approached me and said, "We want to make a film about your life." And I thought, "Oh, that'd be nice." And they made the film and it won a BAFTA. And I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Um, I've also been associated with two other BAFTAs. I was a consultant on the drama Mr Loverman, which is on the BBC towards the end of last year, and he won two BAFTAs this year. So yeah, if you want a BAFTA, just talk to me.
I was going to say, yeah, you've got the luck if people want to get a BAFTA, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about the Black Cop in particular,
Hmm.
and sort of the process of that being made. Tell me about that to start off with, sort of the process of that BAFTA award-winning short film.
Well, I mean, I'd like to say I made the film, but it was made by a wonderful director called Cherish Oteka. And Cherish approached me because she went to an LGBT workshop, and the person running the workshop spoke about me. And Cherish said, "Oh, I want to meet that guy." And we met up in Nando's King's Cross. Uh, and we sat there talking. About 4 or 5 hours later, it was like, "I want to make a film about you." And I was like, "Okay, right." Um, that was in about 2016, 17,
Hmm.
and we couldn't get any funding. No one was interested. Nobody thought it would be a good film. No one was blah blah blah. And then George Floyd happened. And within a week of George Floyd, people were throwing money at us,
Yeah.
which was interesting. So we went with The Guardian. And once that money came in, it was like everything was just rushed.
Hmm.
And my only part in the actual making of the film was to do the narration.
Hmm.
I was filmed doing the narration. All the other part, I didn't meet any of the other characters, any of the other actors. In fact, it was just like I did the narration, and a couple of weeks later, it was like, "Oh, we've got this film. Do you want to see it now?" And I was like, "Oh, that's it." Initially, when I first saw the first rush, I was in a place of, "Oh no, they've missed this out, and that's not in the right place, and all this sort of stuff." And I wasn't really happy with it, if I'm honest.
Hmm.
And then we went to a screening in Manchester, and I was sitting at the back watching the audience watch it. And when I heard the reaction of the audience, or when I felt the reaction of the audience, that's when I thought, ah, okay, okay. And I had to learn to, with that moment, I learned to, I need to let go of what I think of it
Mm-hmm.
and allow it to do whatever it needs to do. Yeah. And then the next thing I heard is that, first of all, we were long listed for a BAFTA, which I thought, oh, that's nice. Then I heard we were shortlisted for a BAFTA, and I was like, okay, that's nice. And then I heard we were one of the nominees, and I just burst into tears.
Mm.
I was like, what is going on here? And found myself at the Royal Albert Hall, and the two of us went up on stage to accept the BAFTA. And I mean, if you see the video of me accepting it, I was just in a place of total disbelief. You know, there was that thing of all these people that I watch on the telly are now sitting here watching me.
Mm.
And it was a very surreal experience. It's it changed me in some ways. Yeah.
How do you feel like that changed you?
It's it kind of said, don't plan. Just be open to what's going to happen, and things will happen. That was, if you'd said year, 2 years before you're going to get a BAFTA, I would say, on what planet? And suddenly there I am standing there, coming off stage, Benedict Cumberbatch shaking my hand, and Martin Freeman saying hello, and it's like, okay, these things don't happen to people like me, but clearly they do.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest change was be open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't narrow your options. Just be open. The potential is wide. It's huge. Don't narrow it to one small pathway.
That's a really good lesson to learn from it. And I
Yeah.
think being open and telling your story in the way you have as what's led to that being the outcome. I really enjoyed it, and I found it quite emotional to watch.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to hear your side of that you've sort of told your story, but it's not necessarily the way that maybe you would have presented it in the first place when you first saw it. What part of that sort of authenticity side of that did you feel that they got that across in the film in the end for you?
I feel they got their message across. Um,
Talk to me about your side of that.
I just didn't feel I was involved. I felt I was disconnected from it,
Mm,
if I'm honest. But like I said, I was happy with the result once I saw the impact it had on audiences.
yeah.
Um, there were parts, I mean, I lived in Nigeria for about 8 years, and that was not even mentioned
Hmm.
in the film. Uh, um, and yeah, I kind of felt disconnected from it in the beginning, but I learned to love it after I saw its reaction and how audiences loved it. Does that make
So
sense?
I think so, yeah, because it's something that maybe as somebody watching it, you don't take that side from it. Maybe you watch it and take the story that they're presenting, and don't maybe think of it as perhaps as you, the person that
No, exactly.
did that. So using that in terms of the work that you're doing in the workshops, and
Mm.
speaking that you do now, what what do you do to sort of, I guess it's real life examples of how people can use that in their life and the work that they're
Mm.
doing. Um, how do you sort of take that deep storytelling side of what you've been through to share it and push that maybe for people if they're thinking about it from a brand perspective?
Uh, well, I mean, the film was not the first time I've told my story.
No.
I've always well, I started training about 2007, 8,
Hmm.
but I've always been a storyteller. I just didn't know it. Yeah. And my friends will come up and I've said, oh, this, and they said, we're not surprised where you are. You've always been that kind of person. And I think we are hardwired to understand stories.
Mm.
And what I like about a story is it connects to something deeper within us. And if you can get past the surface, the story goes deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been blessed with a story that can do that. And I think what people buy into is, and you've said it a couple of times, is authenticity, the
Mm.
truth of the story. Yeah, I was speaking to someone yesterday who said, so with all these film and all the people that you meet, do you have a responsibility to your audience? And I said, no, I have a responsibility to the truth of what I'm saying. The truth will do the work, not me, but I have to be authentic. I have to be real.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there was a certain point that you felt like the storytelling part of it became almost sort of a bit of a mission for you to get that out there?
No, I've never felt it, never looked at it like that. I look at it as a blessing. It works, it resonates, and it's almost like, I suppose it's like, going to Rick Astley and saying, "What do you think of your song, Never Gonna Give You Up?" Yeah, which is played everywhere. And I saw him being interviewed. He said, "Oh, I love that song.
Mm.
No matter how many times I sing it, he said, I love it." And it's the same thing with me in storytelling. I love sharing the story. It's not a mission, it's a vision.
That's a lovely way of putting that. That's a great way of putting that. Um, I'm really interested now, knowing sort of the process of how the film was made and what I
Mm.
took from watching it, on hearing it from sort of your mouth. Can you talk to me about the part mainly that stuck with me? Um, is almost like the turning point that they show it in the film of you coming out.
Mm.
Can you talk to me about that experience within the police force? And I just want to hear it from your mouth.
Mm. Well, I mean, the first person I had to come out to, this is where the film shortened a lot of that
Yeah.
process. The first person I needed to come out to was me. And that took me almost 2 years for me to tell myself I was gay and accept that I was gay. And that was important to me because I thought, if I'm going to do this, tell the world this, I need to be comfortable with it within myself. There was no plan to say, right, by this time I'm going to do this, this, and
Mm.
this. Um, but it got to a point where a lot of things in my life started to collide. And I just felt I was being pushed into this prison that didn't work. Or the way I looked at it, the way I talk about it in the film, I felt like I was in a cocoon and I couldn't get out. And I needed to break out of all these things that were restricting me. And the first person I actually said I was gay to was a gay officer, um, who became a very good friend. And he took me out for lunch because he wanted to tell me that he was going to be working on gay issues on the department, and he just wanted to make sure I was okay with that. And I remember we sat in the park and he told me and everything, and I was sitting there looking down. And then I looked at him and I said, "Actually, I'm gay." And he was like, "Oh." And that was the first person I'd actually mouthed it to.
Yeah.
And then I went back again because I thought, I can't do that again. That was too stressful. And for about a year, I didn't say anything to anyone. And then it got to, there was a weekend where I had just gone into some deep thinking, and, life wasn't working for me. And it was just all playing out inside my head. And I got into work that morning and I was just sitting at my desk, and as it says in the film, and my sergeant came in and she was talking about her boyfriend and stuff like that. And then she just said to me, "I bet you don't have any problems with all the women you've got on the go." And I just looked up and I said, "Actually, I'm gay." And then this little voice inside my head said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I just literally said it, and I felt like I had to get out of the office. And I just literally walked out and I was like, "Oh, the walls didn't crumble, the ceiling didn't come down, There was no explosion. And I remember walking along and there was a guy coming up the stairs and I said to him, I've just come out the closet. He said, you what? I said, I've come out the closet. He goes, good on you. And I'm like, ooh. And it was almost like there was a period I went through where I almost had to say it all the time. You know, you go into fast food restaurant, I want a milkshake, a burger, fries, and I'm gay, by the way. Um, and you know, the only people that I was really scared to talk to initially was my family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then I was approached by someone in the canteen, and this was literally about a week and a half, 2 weeks after I'd come out, officially come out, so to speak. And I've spoken to this woman. She goes, "Oh, I organized the Gay Pride rally in London. Do you want to do a speech at Gay Pride?" And I just thought, "Yeah, why the hell not?" Uh, and uh, and then I thought, if I'm going to do this speech, I need to tell my family. I don't want them to hear it from someone else. I want them to hear it from me.
Yeah.
And the first person I told was my sister, who she'd come round to see me, and I told her, and she just got up, walked out, and said, "No, don't believe it. No, it's not true." And she left. And I thought that went well. And then I went and told my mum, who told me to get out of the house. And I thought that went well. Mm. But I think because I had told myself and I'd accepted myself, that didn't have the impact on me I thought it was going to have,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt comfortable within myself. Even when I walked out on there's a little clip of the speech there on in the film. But even when I walked out onto that stage, there was no fear, there was no nerves. There was just sort of like a kind of being born moment. And when I look back, I think I've been privileged to have quite a few of those moments in my life that have come along and just pushed me into another level.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
your
No,
question took me.
it's great hearing it from sort of your point of view in that. And I guess that's such a positive spin to sort of take from that. But I know that having watched that, that wasn't always sort of the experience, obviously, that you had. It wasn't positive at all, up until sort of, I guess, that almost like a little bit of a turning point for you. And it said in the film there about sort of the thoughts of suicide.
Mm.
Can you talk to me about that?
But it was suicide came. I'd got myself into my story. Essentially, the bulk of my story is about finding that place of belonging.
Yeah.
And in my life, I've never really been in a space where I felt I belonged. I was always the outsider, and belonging is such a powerful thing. And it can be, if you don't have it, it can be almost like you become almost like an addict trying to find it. And you try and find it in, ridiculous ways.
Mm.
Yeah. And, I remember when I was a kid, my foster mother used to say to me, stop giving away your sweets. Right. So I was this kid giving away sweets, hoping that if I give you sweets, you'll all be my friend and I belong to the group and stuff like that. Um, and that kind of lifestyle or that kind of trait um, took me down into a really dark hole. And I'd got to a point where I was in debt to about the tune of about 60 odd grand. Um, I was drinking heavily. Nothing in my life seemed to be working. Everything just seemed to be collapsing. And I was just, I remember going to work. I was working in a department, initially was a great department, and then we had a new manager came in who was a bully. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was the last thing that just pushed me over the edge. And I got home on the weekend, and I remember walking around the living room, just walking around in circles. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And I sat down and I wrote a suicide note, put it on the coffee table, Monday morning, went to the train station with the intention of jumping in front of the fast train. And something weird happened. I just went blank. And it was almost like I blinked. I don't know if you've ever had a general anesthetic
Mm.
where you go in and you go into the theater and you remember going in the theater and then you wake up and you're in a completely different room in a different space. And it's like, how did I get here?
Mm.
They say, oh, you've been out for 3 or 4 hours. But that was like, it was almost like that. I just went blank. And then when I came back to, I was sitting in my office and it was a very weird feeling. And the woman I was working, Lisa came in. She goes, "What are you doing early?" And I just burst into tears. Um, and it was that moment where you sort of thought, I have been dragged down so low. And I was given a counselor, and he asked me 2 questions which had a really profound impact. One of the questions was, sorry, it's memory of it sometimes. It's really good. One of the questions was, who defines you? And I'd never ever thought about that question. I thought I had to be what people expected me to be. And that idea that I could define myself was not on my radar.
Mm.
So that was a big sort of like, woof, light bulb moment. The second question he asked me was, why did you allow people to intimidate you? And I hated that question because I wanted to be in the place of, it's not me, it's everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody else understood me, I wouldn't have a problem. And it made me realize I was looking at life through the lens of a very wounded victim. Um, and once I saw that, and once I faced that reflection, things started to change. Things started to change, and it was like, yeah, I need to be more of me rather than what I think people want me to be. And it's been a great ride since then.
That's such an incredibly powerful question for someone to ask and sort of open
Mm.
the answers to that. Um, and that's something that we sort of we push for our clients when we're doing PR and their storytelling is that
Mm.
that's what people relate to
Mm.
is it's your story, it's yourself, it's the way you feel about yourself and the way that you view things. We often hear that the reason people have set up their own business is because they've had sort of a little bit of a light bulb moment like that, where they've realized it's not about what everyone else thinks about it. If that's what you want to do and do with your life, that's the way you go with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's so incredibly powerful. Um, how do you sort of use that to tell people? I guess you're advising people within business, and I think you work a lot with leaders, don't you, and making sure
Mm. Mm.
they're inclusive in things in their conversations. Can you talk to me a little bit about that side of what you do?
It's more of a conversation, a courageous conversation. And what I like to do is to empower people to be free to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the biggest fear in a lot of these things is, you said about, again, it's the word of the conversation from me, but it's about that authenticity. And one of the things I say to them, I said, have you ever sat in front of someone or heard someone speak somewhere and you thought, no, they're not real.
Mm.
Right? There's just something about them that's not real. They're off, something like that. And most people say, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, and have you ever been in front of someone and you felt, wow, I can really feel and resonate with that? And they say, yeah. I said, how do you know which one you are? And they look at me and I said, your feedback, you're being given feedback every single day, every single moment in how you interact with people, whether it's the cleaner or whether it's the chief executive, right? I said, that feedback, whether people talk to you or avoid you, that's telling you stuff about you. Everything is material for you to understand yourself if you choose to do it. And when I tell my story, what happens in that process is it allows them then to become vulnerable. And I think that that's the important part. If you want to get to the authenticity, you have to allow yourself to become vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Scary.
it's scary if you've never done it. But once you do it and you embrace it, it is incredibly powerful.
Mm.
It's incredibly powerful. I've always said that vulnerability is my superpower. Because when you're in a place, vulnerable doesn't mean I'm exposing my pain. Vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
means I've owned my story. And I can share it wherever I want and whoever I want with. And I can do it from a place of I've grown from this. And I think that's the lesson. What do you need to help you grow?
That's
Because
brilliant.
that's what people will buy into.
Yeah.
Mm.
Summing it up, that is exactly it, isn't it?
Mm.
So if you were to give advice to someone who's maybe within their business, they're starting to want to make themselves more visible, but they're maybe not willing to share things that they know they probably should that make them relatable. What advice would you give to people in that situation?
Know your why. Why is this important to you? Why are you doing this? What's your vision here? How much are you invested in your vision? Because if you're not invested in the vision, if you're invested in the mechanics of the vision and not the actual essence of the vision, you're not going to get it. You can get a really polished, smooth campaign, but if there's no emotion in it, right, there's nothing that I call it a magic.
Mm-hmm.
There's no magic there. Right? It would be good and it could be successful, but if you look at a lot of in my awareness, there's a lot of advertising campaigns that have happened more or less by accident, right? Only because somebody did something else. I was trying to think of a couple on top of my head, but I can't. But that's what makes those magical moments when you allow the real to talk. And it doesn't mean there's a difference between coming in and bearing your soul, right, and saying, woe is me, this is my life, this is how hard it was. That's not it. People want to feel that they can take something from your story that will lift them up, that will move them in some way. People want to be moved. Um, yeah. But the first person you got to move is yourself.
Mm. That's really, really important. I think people listening are going to take that away from this because that's the bit that has certainly resonated with me the most.
Mm.
It starts with you. It's not just telling your story, and getting people to not pity you or feel sorry for you. They take something from it that
Yeah.
they can relate to and hang on to. I think that's great advice. Um, and something that I could talk to you about this all day. I find it so not just interesting, it's inspiring in ways to make you think about your own life and things that you've got going
Mm.
on. And I love that you picked up sort of the bit of authenticity. That's sort of the word of the conversation, and that's something that I just automatically took from sort of reading your story and looking a little bit about you online. It's just your authenticity in that. And something that Fiona said to me, she said to ask you about was wearing odd shoes. Tell me, Jeed, what does she mean?
It's in the title, wearing odd shoes. Um, I look at myself as a conversation starter,
Yeah.
right? Um, whether it's a conversation with me or with the person you're sitting next to or in your own head, right? There's that thing about There was a moment. Okay, let me put it into a story.
Yeah. Tell me
Um,
a story.
yeah, a few years ago, the Evening Standard did an article about me, and it had a full-page photograph of me in this article. And the day it came out, I was on the tube,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember sitting there on the tube and watching all these people reading it. There was like about 10, 15 copies of this stand, all looking at me. And I sat there and I was just looking at this, and it was a bizarre feeling. And then I thought, these people don't even realize that I'm sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
And I thought, wonder what would happen if I stood up now and said, hi. I didn't, but I sort of thought about it. But what it made me think about was how powerful it is to grab that energy, right? That energy, what you do with it and how you draw it. I went to Obama's inauguration, and I remember being in the crowd there. There's almost 2 million people there on the day.
Mm.
And just thinking, this one man has all this energy coming towards him. How do you cope with that? Freddie Mercury was
Mm-hmm.
another one who could be able to crowd that. And sorry, what was your question again? I went off on a tangent there.
Shoes. Shoes.
Shoes, yes. So I've always thought, how do I stop the thoughts?
Yeah.
How do I stop the thoughts? So I wear odd shoes, right? And for two reasons. One is it's a metaphor for we all wear different shoes, right? The second thing is I like that feeling when you're sitting there, either on the train or something, and people go, right? And like I said, either they'll say something to me, or they'll say something to the person next to them, or they sit there with this, why is he doing? You can see the thoughts going in their head. And I'm sort of thinking, that's what storytelling does. It arrests, it stops you in that moment. And it gives you something to focus on or to change or look at in a different way, right? It interrupts the day to day and just sways things. So I wear the odd shoes just to say, you can be different. You can be who you want to be. And it's a conversation starter.
That is a perfect way, I think, to sum up and finish this podcast. That's a great piece of advice that people can take one way or the other. They want to go and wear odd shoes, go and do it.
Find what your odd shoes are for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love that.
Purple
Thank you
hair.
so much. Yes, purple hair. You'll see
Yeah.
people will have their sort of things for their own personal branding that they have taken as their way to make people, I guess, stop and want to know that story.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to me today, G.
I hope it's been useful.
It's been lovely. I've taken lots from it. If people want to connect with you, G, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram under Purple Frog Connections. I'm on LinkedIn under my full name. Or drop me an email at info@purplefrog-connections.com.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you very much for watching today's episode of Real PR. I hope you've taken as much away from this episode as I have. I've really loved talking to G, and we'll see you again soon.